I will call to order this License and Ordinance Committee meeting on October 11th. It is 5:33. Our first order of business is comments from citizens present. Is there anyone who would like to speak?
Looks like Nicholas might have handed his hand up.
Hey guys, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Hi. Hey, I apologize for my my dress tonight. I just got out of the gym. But I did want to say good evening. This is my first talk as a citizen with the city of Middleton. My name is Nick Kurowski. I live in the apartment complexes across the street from Stonehorse Green with my wife, Claire. Both my wife and I are airline pilots. I fly out of Delta. I'm sorry, I fly out of Minneapolis for Delta Airlines. My wife flies out of Chicago as a SkyWest pilot. In fact, if you flew out of either Chicago or Minneapolis this past summer with your family, it's likely you probably flew on one of our jets. So I apologize if you guys were delayed. I would like to voice my concern over the noise levels produced by the amplification devices, such as speaker systems, outside of the hours prescribed by the city's ordinance, which is 1605 subpart 2, paragraphs A, B, and D. Last weekend was the annual jazz festival hosted by the new Stonehorse Green space, where jazz music could be heard through my bedroom window at all hours of the night. It was about 10 p.m. and for nearly 12 hours straight on Saturday. As airline pilots, our rest periods are tightly regulated by the Federal Aviation Regulations, Part 117, which states that we must receive 8 hours of, quote, uninterrupted rest. In fact, before reporting for duty, we have a legal obligation to call in unfit if we cannot get 8 hours of rest. However, last weekend, my wife and I were unable to enjoy the peace and quiet of our living space due to the noise levels coming from Stonehorse Green space. I promptly researched the city of Middleton's noise ordinance and was pleased to find that the ordinance 1605 was quite thorough in restricting the use of amplification devices such as speakers, and it also limits the time in which noise associated with music and otherwise to the hours of approximately 11 to 1 and 5 to 7 on weekdays. It seems the ordinance was well thought out and ultimately protects citizens like my wife and I. I was unhappy, however, to find out that this committee can waive compliance with the ordinance with the simple wave of a magic bureaucratic wand by issuing permits for the amplification of noise outside of the hours in the city's noise ordinance. So I do have a few questions for you guys tonight. What objective criteria does the committee use to determine whether a permit is issued? How is the issuance of permits better for the citizens of Middleton than the compliance with the ordinance designed to protect them? And lastly, Middleton is the good neighbor city. So how does this committee show being a good neighbor to all of the citizens when you guys are issuing permits to allow the amplification of such noises outside of people's apartments? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Nicholas. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? All right, I don't see anyone else's hands. So we'll go on to the approval of minutes. Do any of my committee members have a motion to approve?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes from September 13th.
I will second that.
Any questions or comments? If none, all in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we'll go on to licenses and permits. An application for a special event permit by Middleton Hills Neighborhood Association, Stephanie Conwell, contact person for the Middleton Hills Kids Costume Parade on October 31st, 2022 at Middleton Hills Neighborhood. Who is up for that? Is that Laura's?
That would be me. Yeah. Yeah. So this is an annual event. They haven't had it since pre-pandemic in 2019, but it has been kind of a neighborhood annual event for them. And the parade route has been reviewed by police department and public works. No concerns. They have requested a police escort, and they know that is not guaranteed, but will be available based on availability.
Any questions from anyone?
I saw that they're just putting cones out, correct?
Yes, at each of the intersections, along with a volunteer in a vest.
Okay. And they are still the $100 fee, and that's just for the traffic control plan itself. So it's not, there's no extra fee or anything for those big signs that go up to close the roads.
They actually don't even use those for how brief this parade is.
Oh, okay.
It's really just the cones, and it's not even considered like a street closure because of how quickly the parade is done.
Okay, so it's the time that dictates that stuff. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else, Luke? Anything? If there's nothing else, I'd like to move approval for this application for a special event permit for the Middleton Hills Kids Costume Parade.
I will second. This is Kendra, I'll second.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If none, let's have a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. On to number 2, application for a special event permit by City of Middleton Parks and Recreation Department. Gregory Lamping, contact person for the 2022 EMS Santa Parade and Candy Cane Hunt on December 17th, 2022 at Middleton Neighborhoods and Lakeview Park.
It's me again. Again, another annual event held by the Parks and Rec Department. This one is coinciding with the EMS Santa Parade this year. I think typically they've been on different days, but it's kind of run back to back. This has been reviewed by Captain Geisler at Police Department, Sean at Public Works, and then also obviously the Parks Department. No concerns.
Katie, should we, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Should we look at this? Because 2 and 3 are they're intertwined, right? Same person, Greg Lamping, Candy Cane Hunt.
My bad. Yeah, we absolutely can combine them. Application for an outdoor amplified sound permit by Gregory Lamping for Candy Cane Hunt, 2426 Hubbard Avenue, Middleton, Wisconsin, for speeches and announcements from 3:30 to 6:00 p.m. on December 17th, 2022 for the Candy Cane Hunt. Thank you, Luke. Sorry about that.
No. I will move approval of 2 and 3 simultaneously.
I will second. This is Kendra.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor of the special event permit and the outdoor amplified sound permit signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next one, number 4, application for a special event permit by Downtown Middleton Business Association, Andrea Van Ness, contact person for the 2022 Spooky Stroll on October 28th, 2022 in downtown Middleton.
This is another annual event, and it hasn't been done since 2019 again, but it's just kind of a downtown trick-or-treating event where some of the downtown businesses give out candy to the little ones.
It is super cute and very well attended usually, from what I've witnessed. Anybody have any questions or problems?
What are the hours on this one again?
Ooh, thank you.
1 to 3.
1 to 3. Got it.
One to- yep.
Thank you.
And that's typically on when there's a good day off of school, right?
Yeah, this is on that Friday where I do believe I don't know if it's an in-service day, but yeah, Middleton is not in session.
Okay.
And the streets aren't closed off for this?
No.
They are not, no.
Okay.
Just as a side note, we are working with getting our volunteers to, we're requesting volunteers to help with traffic just across Parmenter Street as well. We've done that in the past.
Mhm.
Okay.
I think new this year since prior years too, is we've got the 2 4-way stops on Parmenter at Elmwood and Hubbard. I don't know that those were in place the last time we did this event.
I don't think they were, you're right.
Gosh,
Yeah.
that was so long ago now. My kids missed all that. Like, they grew up right through all that. They've never done it.
Additionally, this is usually, I mean, these are younger kids and they're usually there with parents as well. So they have parents escorting them.
Right. Well, I would like to move approval for this special event permit.
Mrs. Kendra, I'll second.
Any other comments, questions? If none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. So number 5 and 6 are going to go together as well. Application for a special event permit by City of Middleton, Matthew Stroh-Snyder, contact person for the Fall Fun Series on October 13th, October 20th, and October 27th, and November 3rd, 2022 at Stonehorse Green. Also, application for an outdoor amplified sound permit by Matt Stroh-Snyder for City of Middleton, 7426 Hubbard Avenue, Middleton, Wisconsin, for band and sound system 6:30 to 9, October 13, 2027, and November 3rd, 2022 for the Fall Fun Series.
Yeah, and so this one, not an annual, this would be new, obviously with just the new Stonehorse Green space. However, it would somewhat mimic the summer fun series that happened last summer when the space was not under construction. But right now they have planned, I believe 3 of the 4 nights are movies. The November 3rd date is musician. And I believe the plan is to have the movies begin at dusk and go until they're finished, and then everybody departs.
So-
I
Go
have,
ahead.
sorry,
Go ahead, Katie.
I do have a comment. I live on where am I? East side of Park Street, at almost Park and Hubbard. And on Saturday evening, I heard the jazz music way too clearly
Hmm.
than I ever have heard any downtown stuff. So I can empathize with Nicholas. I can't imagine trying to get sleep for work, but I can say that I've never heard sound like I hear the football games from the high school and I hear music from Capitol Brewery, but I've never heard anything as loud as I did. I'm super happy that Stonehorse is open and I'm so excited about all these events, but we need to work on dialing in the sound system to avoid having more problems. So anyway, I don't know who the sound person is, if there's a dedicated sound person or if it's just whoever's there.
That was gonna be, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, that's a great question. I guess I can't answer that. I can definitely look into it. But I don't know who is kind of taking on that role.
And Saturday afternoon, I was watching them set up some of the sound equipment, and it was unclear to me if it was the personal sound equipment of the musician or if it's something that's at the facility itself. I'm assuming the former, that each musician brings in their own sound equipment. And so,
That there do
might-
seem to be some permanent speakers mounted on the stage.
oh, okay, there are. I didn't notice that. Okay, good to know.
So, yeah, I was gonna say, which is what sort of mechanism, if any, do we have in place for ensuring that whatever it is within that sound limit, right? And maybe this is getting to your same kind of doubling up on your question, Katie, which is, you know, the closest thing I can think of is I remember we had one time Mark Walter and I went to, and we measured the lumens on a light because of in order to get it the conform to an ordinance. And I'm wondering if there's something similar that we can measure decibel levels, you know, for the Stonehorse Green events.
I feel like Mark Opitz was measuring sound decibels for some other issue. So I think it can happen.
We do at the police department have a decibel meter reader. I think it brings up an interesting issue. That is a very small piece of property. The amplified sound permit says it has to be X number of decibels at the lot line. The lot line is obviously not too far from where that music is being played. So that's something to consider. I just want to also point out that Alder Olson has her hand up. So I think she has.
So thanks, Kathy. We'd love some comments from you.
I know that the Feature Act, they did have their own sound equipment. Other than that, I think that there is equipment there that we would hope to be using because they were such a high, you know, they high quality kind of performance that they brought in their own. And that's maybe what happened where there's more sound there than what normally would have been kicking through there. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thanks.
Yeah, I do think though, if we just tell everyone, you know, this last weekend was our trial run. We're gonna just have to remind any acts that come that they need to be more mindful because we are so close to people's homes. Gosh, I'd love to, Jeremy, I'd love to talk to you further about how many decibels it's supposed to be at the lot line and maybe have us measure at some point.
Yeah, and we can definitely do that. I'm just looking at it right now. Generally speaking, it's 65 decibels during what I would say are not peak hours. So like up until 9 p.m. and then it's 60 from 9 p.m. to midnight if that's approved by you guys and or the council, of course. And then it's different on Friday and Saturday. It's 65 decibels from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. and can't exceed 60 beyond that.
Did you say to 11 p.m.?
On Fridays, Friday and
Okay.
Saturday until 11 p.m. That is correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that information is actually, if you, it's in very small writing, but it's at the bottom of the amplified sound permit application.
Yeah.
I just wanted to comment that there is an app for your phone for decimal readings. I don't know how accurate it is, but it'll give you an indication of what it is too. So thanks.
Thanks for that.
Given the highly residential nature of Stonehorse Green in comparison to some of the other areas, I'm wondering if it makes sense to, and I know that this is part of our topic is the unique nature of Stonehorse Green, but to talk about, you know, the unique nature of noise at that location as well.
Mhm.
So as we're talking about these two agenda items, what do we need to do with them, if anything, given this, and how much of this can we talk about when we talk about how it applies? So what do we need to do with the current application? Are we okay with it as it is? From 6:30 to 9?
Matt, can we say we approve it on the condition that decibel readings not exceed 65 decibels at the lot line during the time that these events are happening?
I think that's already implied, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that I mean, you could say it and reinforce it, I guess, but yeah, I mean, the ordinance, by ordinance, it's all permits shall be subject to the following limitations.
Mhm.
So, If we're just reciting what we can impose a different limit if we think a different limit is appropriate, but without saying anything, those limits that are set forth in the ordinance will apply.
Okay,
So on a Friday or Saturday, it's 65 decibels at the lot line between 9 a.m. and 11 p.m.
I'm curious to know, like Luke was asking, how much louder 65 decibels sounds like when you're bouncing it off apartment buildings that are so close. I'm not a sound expert.
Just to interject from the police department standpoint, this
Please.
is probably not something that the police department should necessarily be involved in as an enforcement end of things. If you're looking for just information and collection of information, that's fine. Obviously this was a city approved project. License and ordinance has the obligation to approve or disapprove of it. I just don't want necessarily the police department stuck in the middle of a noise issue from a permanent fixed project. Just want to throw that out there.
No, I appreciate that. I really do. I guess I would like Laura just to make sure Matt is sensitive to the fact that this is a new, smaller space, then we're trying to dial in a sound that isn't offensive to people trying to live there.
Right.
Does that make
And
sense?
this is probably a stupid question, but as defined by a lot line in the space that it is, would that be anywhere on the sidewalk?
I would expect that the lot line falls somewhere to the just to the outside of the sidewalk is typically where. So the public right of way goes all the way to the outside of the sidewalk. So that's roughly
it's like
roughly where I would expect the lot line to be. There might be some variance, but
Okay. So like the grass terrace area or,
well, beyond that. So, I mean, the sidewalk sits within the public right of way typically. So, the terrace area is well within the public right of way. It's right on the outer edge of the sidewalk is where the
Gotcha.
lot line typically is.
okay.
So, and just to be clear, Matt, you're saying the part of the sidewalk away from the street.
The outermost edge of the sidewalk away from the street, correct?
When I think of outermost, I think of standing on the property
That's,
and going out from there.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I'm going the other way. So
that's why I wanted to clarify,
if
because
you're on if you're in Stonehorse Green and you're walking towards the street, as soon as you hit the sidewalk, that's when you're crossing the lot line.
That's your lot line.
Yeah.
Right.
and you also need to keep in mind that the stage is closer to the Elmwood side of that lot line than it is the Hubbard side or the Aurora side. So
Right.
that sound level is different on each side. Obviously, I think the most concerning side is going to be the south side along Hubbard Avenue, which faces most of the apartments there.
Right.
And I don't know if I don't think I called this out, but Matt is proposing to have the streets closed as they were like this last weekend, just the Hubbard Avenue to Elmwood.
Is that a separate?
It's a question. And this will hopefully, I'm hoping to just kind of revamp the application because it does seem like it needs to be called out a little bit more. It's more of like, are you requesting any city streets to be closed to traffic? In this case, he did hit yes, but I mean, I feel like, I think there was a street closure map included in the packet. But I feel like when somebody clicks that yes button or box, it needs to be kind of described, like what times are you requesting? Because that's pretty important information. And to that point, he is looking to do a no parking order each Thursday, starting at 5 p.m., close the streets at 6 p.m., and reopen at 10:30 p.m.
On Aurora.
Hubbard,
Or Hubbard Aurora curve.
yes, correct. the L.
So we'll consider that an add-on to our vote tonight. Because he did check the box. Does anyone have any inkling on how important that felt? Did you see, were there a lot of people in the street? Kendra, you were down there.
For Thursdays last summer or for this last weekend?
This last weekend.
This last weekend, I don't feel like a lot of people were. Last summer on the Thursday nights, there were a lot of kids in the street, but that's because we had chalk in the streets for the kids to do. I have a feeling with a movie being on, people who want to watch the movie will be in the green. Anybody who wants to socialize will be back in the streets. Just as far as like the kids can go watch the movie, parents will be behind.
So it's still a good idea.
I think it is. I think closing off, sorry. I think closing off those streets when there's crowds down there makes the most sense. Just because of the angled parking and the visibility and people moving around and walking around. I don't think it's, I think it's safer and personally just a more fun, just an easier, more accessible, more inviting place to be when those streets are closed off.
Okay, fair. All right. Anything else on this, guys?
I'm wondering as far as sound goes too.
I have a quick question. Oh,
Go ahead.
Claire, I think
yeah, I have a question about these the movies that are going to be played. And because I think I just with a quick Google, it says that 65 decibels is like a conversation. Are the movies going to be played over the speakers? Because when like Gangnam and Bruno Mars and all of that was being played over the speakers, it was like it was in our apartment. So I just don't know, you know, how we're going to control 65 decibels.
That was going to be my question too. I mean, if you're talking about Avengers movie and an explosion, that can be pretty loud. You talk about a Disney musical, sometimes those high notes get kind of loud. So it really just depends on, I'm just wondering, and the problem with the movie, it's kind of like some conversations happen like this, and then some conversations happen really loud. So the decibels in a movie tends to be all over the place and very hard to gauge. So that would be just my concern. I do note that these hours are within our normal sound hours, so I'm not, I'm cognizant of that, but at the same time, if we are going to start talking about decibels and limiting that, the movies get tricky.
Okay.
Do you know if Matt knows what they're showing, Laura? Did he make any, obviously it's not in the permit, but.
Well, we know the first three movies.
Oh, we do?
Fantastic Mr. Fox, Labyrinth, and
Oh, Coco?
Coco.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love Labyrinth. Okay. Okay, so they're not musicals. Well, Coco is, I guess.
Would it be a good idea to approve part as opposed to an opportunity for us to revisit midway rather than all at once, or would that just cause more work and confusion?
Yeah, I don't know. Because yeah, obviously a movie has not been shown in that space yet, so it's hard to know what 65 decibels is going to sound like for a movie playing. I really don't know.
given the newness of all of this and that we're still trying to kind of figure this out as we go, my recommendation is that we approve, but then we have this on a future L&O agenda for us to revisit in the interim, once we've got at least one of the movies underneath our belts.
These, just for reference, these are all going to be done by the time the next meeting meets.
Got it. All right. Yeah, good point. Good point. Oh, okay. All right. Well, we can work with the city staff to try if we need to make a revision midstream in terms of volume, et cetera. So I'm comfortable approving for now, but we should definitely make sure that we continue to monitor this ongoing and ensure that we are doing our best to hold really great events, but also being cognizant of the disruption to the area the neighbors.
Yeah, is that your motion?
I believe so. So yes, I will move for move approval.
I will second that. Any more discussion?
I just have one more question. It just flew out of my brain. All right, if it comes to me, I'll ask it later.
Okay. Are we okay to?
Oh, that's what I was thinking. Are they gonna have the cauldron going? Do they know?
I believe so. I think that's the plan, as long as I think the way it stands now is if they know that they have shifts to have it be monitored, then
Okay.
especially for these cooler nights, I think, yes, the plan
Okay.
will have it on.
Okay. Because okay. I'm just looking at the one spot on the permit where it says, will there be open flame cooking in booths or trailers? That's the only place where I can see open flame anywhere. So I'm just, it's just as
Yeah.
a note for what we might need to keep in mind for these permits for it. Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Okay, any more discussion? If none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. On to miscellaneous. First part is discussion on the fencing requirement for alcohol sales for special events involving temporary B licenses or expanded premises.
And I put this on here at the request of Dan Ramsey. As you can see, it was back from April. Just a little history on this. This has been kind of an ongoing discussion for L&O as to whether or not a fence would be required for all temp B or expanded premises. And at that time, Larry Beckler was actually filling in for Matt, who was gone. And his recommendation was that we kind of make this discussion later in the year, because otherwise we might have to retroactively make those changes for any permits that had already been approved. So I talked to Katie via email this week, said, do you want it still on here? And she said, sure, let's leave it on and discuss it a little more. So, and just as a reference, that L&O, that requirement for the fencing is not a law. It was an L&O decision well before I was part of L&O. So it's been there for years. But it's, as you guys probably know, been kind of a point of discussion for almost every single alcohol related event that we've reviewed here. So.
Well, and that's, so give me a little recap then of the history, because we didn't have them required at Good Neighbor this year, correct?
So there was, but it was a modified version. There was
Okay.
a fence around almost the entire premise. The exception was on the west side where there's a lot line with a lot of those houses have fences and trees. And then there was a fence on the north side and the south side. And then we actually had them, initially there wasn't going to be a fence on the east side, but I did a walkthrough there on Friday morning and said, nah, we should probably have one here. So they put that up, no problem. So, and there is, potential here for, I think, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this has kind of been the discussion in the past, is based on type of events. Would Good Neighbor Fest probably need a fence? I guess from the police department standpoint, I think that's a very good idea. Whereas a small event in a small venue may not need that.
Yeah, like Gilda's Club.
Correct, yeah.
But they also, well, yeah, but I remember talking about fences on that one too, and there were some concerns because of the public bike path and there was a gap in the fence, so, okay. So it's been on a case by case basis essentially.
It kind of has. Now, the standard for the application for a Tempe is that it says you have to have, I think it's a double 24-inch fence, at least 3 feet apart, or one 48-inch fence all the way around the expanded premise.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, it serves two functions. One, to help delineate the space, in which case any single tier of fencing would be able to do that. And then secondarily, is to deter, handing beer over the fence. And, certainly I think some events have a greater propensity for that to happen than others. And then also, depending on the space itself, some places you might have greater concerns about boundary definition than in others. So, but Jeremy said it's just sort of been a kind of a long-standing policy, but one that we're sort of revisiting, I guess.
Yeah, and I kind of don't remember why Dan Ramsey wanted it back on the discussion, but as I recall, it's very expensive to provide all that fencing, especially the double fencing. I liked the newer modified
Me too, yeah.
just outer fencing for the Good Neighbor Festival. And at the same time, a smaller event would do better with just a little beer garden fenced off as far as money for them to buy fencing or rent fencing. So I am of two minds on that. And I'm happy to listen to anyone with more experience on that.
Do we know of, do we know of events that have not taken place because of the prohibitive costs of installing the fence?
I don't know
I
that
don't
I
know.
have.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't know that there's ever been any that haven't been. I can tell you that there's been quite a few who have brought up the expense as a concern.
Jeremy, how do you view this in terms of just from a public safety standpoint?
I guess from my point of view, it's I guess it's circumstantial based on what the event is. Like I said, I think Good Neighbor Festival should have some fencing. We were happy with what it had this year, which was a lot less than it had been in the past.
Yeah.
This kind of goes back at like the history of Good Neighbor Festival. When there were two separate licensed premises, it was very clear, and we put a fence around each of them, and that was simple. This is much bigger. I can tell you for GNF, talking with their staff for the grounds, they have the items needed for this. I think they've purchased all of it. They have the posts, they have the fencing. It wasn't a big deal to add that portion that I talked about. So whereas I think they'd enjoy not having any fencing. I think like the points that Matt brought up are worthy of having a fence, in my opinion, and just kind of limiting that access in and out. And not only who can, like Matt said, who walks out with an open intoxicant and who's passing one on to somebody else. It's probably less likely in the current setup because it's just an open area, but it never happened. But VFW had looked at using Stonehorse Green in the past last year. And then they were talking about how do we put a fence in something in an area that small. And that was before there was anything even there, of course.
Right.
So even theoretically, the city could have an alcohol related event at Stonehorse Green, and would we require that fencing for that small area for a city sponsored event? And should it be treated the same for private events as well?
So wouldn't prevent anyone from passing a beer to anyone or an alcohol to anyone, but would something like provided or required sign for anyone of holding an event to post any alcoholic beverages beyond this point are prohibited, or does that do any good? Does that save any event from not happening because of a offense expense?
And I don't know how many 10B permits, Laura, you might be able to chime in on this. I don't think it's been that many. We have Good Neighbor Festival. Kiva had their concert series. Those are obviously bigger events with, 1,000+ people anticipated. So I like, again, from a security standpoint, more than anything, from security from the police perspective anyway, having a fencing requirement for that. But if it were a smaller event, I have no issue with you guys considering that and asking those questions and going from there.
Is there a number of participants that would be a comfort level from a security standpoint? Is it 100? Is it 50?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that I have a solid number for you because it comes down to what type of event is it too. Is it the Gilda's Club fundraiser? They're an isolated area. They're kind of, they're off the beaten path other than literally the path where people might come in from there, but probably not a huge concern. It's kind of an invite. You need a ticket to get in kind of thing. And then I think there was one across the street, Laura, actually we had talked about the Chamber of Commerce was going to have an event down at Lakeview Park, and that didn't end up happening there. But
Right.
Is that a concern in an area like a park where there may be kids? Because it was going to be at Lakeview Park, so there might be people just walking through. They might just slide right in and potentially grab a drink.
Yep.
Completely circumstantial, I guess, in my eyes.
Yeah, see, I that's what comes to mind for me is more location than size. But maybe it's both. Maybe it's location and size. But that's, to me, it seems there's, and who it is, right? If,
Yeah.
Time of day also, I would say, right?
Yep,
Mhm.
for sure.
Yeah, so I don't mind our current,
Yeah.
I'm not privy to the people who are saying that it's an issue to be in there, but I think I would support making it a more of a case by case, situation. We're not looking at pages and pages of permits every month, right?
Right.
So we have the time. I mean, I recognize that staff is the one that's looking this over, and so I would appreciate any point of view as far as the time and consideration that Jeremy and Laura have to spend thinking about this and considering this when these things come in. But I would vote, or I would support keeping it a little bit more nuanced and a little more hands-on and taking things situation by situation rather than making it a bright line policy decision. But I'm new, maybe that's not, maybe staff has different point of view, maybe that's not what people in the past, I'm not, giving conversations in the past, I don't know what concerns were raised, so I'd be interested to know any more, but.
And Matt, I don't know how long has this policy been in place? I know you've been here a while.
As long as I can.
Okay.
As long as I can
But-
remember. And you see it at other, I can just think of, certainly the typical sort of classic, beer tent kind of band and big crowd kind of events, 4th of July festivals and stuff. It seems to be a common sight. So I think it kind of all arises out of that tradition. I certainly think it makes sense for that to sort of be the general default position. But I definitely also think there's, if applicants request it, I certainly think there are times when, like I said, certainly, events during the daytime when you don't necessarily have the event and the type of crowd isn't, rowdy, sort of seeing bands and that kind of crowd, smaller crowds, daytime, it's easier to see things going on. There can be a host of factors that, say location, or you say, if it's requested, I think a modification to our usual fencing requirements is appropriate.
A variance.
I think that sounds really reasonable, like have it as a default. If it's just not going to work with whatever event is going to be held, then they can appeal to us to have it modified. Does that make sense to everybody? And we don't need a vote on this tonight, right? This is just a discussion.
Right, yeah, I mean, there's really nothing formal that makes this exist. So,
And if we don't do anything, it
right.
stays.
Yeah, I think it's just a discussion, and maybe, as we get into next year's special event season, just that we're all kind of on the same page of what we're willing to entertain, and certainly what advice perhaps staff may be able to give if, people start saying, oh God, do we have to have this fence? And at least staff has some basis to say, well, we've discussed it. There are certain circumstances, maybe, this was likely to be my recommendation. And so if there's some comfort level there, it's good to enter that with sort of everyone not being on the same page versus making it up on the fly when somebody comes and requests it.
Yeah, fair. All right, anything else on this one? Sounds like we're all kind of in agreement on this. Well, then let's move on to our last discussion point, which is the discussion on the use of Stonehorse Green as it applies to the L&O committee.
And this was just carryover from last month. I know there had been discussion about developing some sort of checklist to identify what qualifies as a quote unquote city entity for the use of that land. So that's why it's here.
Yeah. Luke, do you want to?
Yeah, Katie, do you have the email? I don't know if did you pass on the email that I sent to you to?
No, I'm not legally able to.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Let me actually let's see. Maybe the.
I have it though. Do you want me to read it, or do you want to share the screen?
Yeah. In fact, let me. So I sent. Let's hold on 1 second. Sorry. 3. Oh man. Sorry, let me find it here.
You're
Okay,
fine.
so
At least you know what you're looking for.
I sent some preliminary ideas to Alder Nelson, and in based again, this is all just kind of what I did some research on what kind of what I'll call unique properties amongst other communities to try and figure out what the best approach would be. What I landed on, and is again, this is totally open for discussion, is that there would be a designation that, again, this wouldn't be open for anybody, but would be designated as a community partner as determined by the CDA. And I thought the CDA would be the most responsible party, given that they are kind of largely in charge of the downtown, et cetera. And that there would be a specific criteria that one would have to be, meet in order to be designated as a community partner, including the type of event that they would be holding, right? And so I put together some thoughts, for example, that it would, and the common theme on all of these is that this would have to be a public event. So this would be something that could not be exclusive, but instead would be something that would be beneficial to the entire community, hence the name of community partner. So yeah, so let me if there would be also a fundraiser, a youth educational program, all organizing volunteers to perform a community service, Those were the initial thoughts. With ultimately, once the CDA approves, the community partner can do up to 3 events per year that meet this criteria, but it would require an annual recertification component. So let me pause there for any initial reactions or thoughts.
I like this. I'm wondering your thoughts on the up to 3 events before in a year.
Yeah, I think just because, well, I wrestled with this, which is, is this a application that they need to fill out every time? And I think what I'm trying to find in terms of the fine line is making sure that we, they meet the criteria without being overly burdensome, right? And so I kind of arbitrarily landed on the number 3. It could be, up to 1 event, they have they have to prove this criteria every time, or maybe once they've done it once, then it's good into perpetuity. That the middle ground there is what I was kind of shooting for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So like Matt Stroh-Snyder's fall fun events, the movies, that would, like, for you, count as the series would count as 1 event.
I would actually think of this more as each event was its own separate, or each movie was its own separate event. So yeah,
So 3 movies and then the next. Okay, got it.
Well, and I guess and then there's always the opportunity to
I mean,
more.
Yeah, I mean, historically, even the city has to come back and get event permits. I mean, that's what he just had to do.
Right.
So it's not unheard of. And they can group them. Kendra, any comments? And Kathy, anything?
Remind me of the makeup of the CDA. There's 1 council person on it. There's 1.
No, there are a couple of us on it.
Okay.
And Abby is on it. The mayor chairs it.
Okay.
The intent of which, and Katie, it's been a while since I've been on, but more or less the CDA has been designated, whether or not it was the original intent or not, of kind of, the main, what I'll call maybe downtown focused committee. Is that fair?
Yeah, fair.
And that's ultimately why. I mean, again, maybe this is Parks Committee instead, or maybe this is, maybe there is no committee, right? Maybe it's L&O. Like, I don't mean to be looking like we're, passing the buck here. I just figured that there would be some sort of a designation that would empower, groups to clearly designate, who can participate or who can hold events, I should say, it's on her screen, without it necessarily like anyone and everyone, but also at the same time not being such a high burden that no one can do it. Because it is intended to do, the community type building events that we're talking about. I mean, that was the founding vision of it from, when first inception of the idea.
Laura,
No.
I welcome any comments from you as well.
Yeah, I wish Abby or Matt were on the call, because I do feel like their vision for this space was, I mean, city sponsored only. I don't think they wanted it to be this broad, but again, it's a new space. So, maybe down the road, I think they'd be open to this. I don't, it's hard because I don't want to speak for them, but as of right now, I don't think they would be on board for this, just the vibe I've gotten.
Well, I can totally appreciate that. And I'm willing to keep this on as a discussion point. You know, ongoing, if
Yeah.
we would like, because there's no vote tonight. But the point is, we're not okay with anyone reserving Stonehorse Green for their wedding.
Yes.
We're not okay with the family reunion.
Mhm.
It's not a park space that you can rent.
Right.
Exactly.
Public, like, think of it as the town square.
Yep.
And
I do think these are great, because I think these are going to need to be part of the criteria, because there's no way that right now, I mean, obviously it just opened, it's going to be the end of the year, the season. I mean, but like, if the city is responsible for all of that programming year round, that's a lot to take on. So I think they'd be open to sharing it with, you know, some other great causes that are out there. So yeah, I think it's just not quite there yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, the other thing we do need to be careful of is, you know, what kind of forum we are creating. As soon as this is no longer a space that the city controls and it's city message and city events, and you let somebody else come and say, hey, no, I want to, okay, we'll let you come, and it starts looking like it's open to the public.
Yep.
Then all of a sudden you entirely lose control of the types of events and just these criteria here. There's, I think, a lot of different events that could fall into that criteria that I don't think is really what the city had envisioned.
That's my concern too. That I would almost, I would think you would need at least 2 of those things to begin with. But even then, I think I don't want to start going down this road yet. I agree with Laura that we keep it with the vision of it keeping as a city only.
city only events at this point.
Yeah,
I think that's fair. And I think, I don't want to speak for Luke. I'm sure you're fine with this, Luke. I don't know.
is that something that has to be written into the ordinance though, into 2104 to make it clear?
I think the way it stands right now, it already is spelled out that it has to be a city-sponsored event. So we don't have any criteria out there.
I don't think that was made into ordinance quite yet. That was
No.
just kind of our discussion from the last meeting. And Kate, I just want to let you know that Kathy's had her hand up as well. So.
Oh man, I'm sorry, Kathy. Please just butt in. Come on.
No problem. Laura, I think you are right. And that is why we hired hired Matt, is so that he could program the space, and we would have, I think the fundraising for the nonprofit was part of the problem when the VFW wanted to come in and they wanted to have a little beer garden thing and sell beer, but then they had to change it. And the idea, I think, for the Stonehorse Green was that anybody could come, and there wouldn't be a cost for anything if anybody wanted to come. So, and with our events person, I think that we could get plenty of programming provided. Plus, we have a couple years worth of funding for programming already too. So I don't think it's a problem of not enough events happening. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Luke, are you, anything else on that from you, sir?
No. I think I probably tend to lean more on the permission of, or welcoming of the public, rather than making this only city property, because TIF dollars, et cetera, were part of it, right? And that's city. So but that being said, by no stretch of the imagination am I saying that this has to be the solution. I think we will, I'm sure we can find a good compromise.
Luke, can I ask you a follow-up question on that? These
Please.
are all going to be open to the public. Everything that happens at Stonehorse Green is open to the public. What do you mean by not having, it's to finance? I mean, that's why we're going to have everything open to the public.
Well, I think because the term was city sponsored, right? And so are there going to be events that are, I guess, to me, understand that they don't necessarily have to be city sponsored, but still serve a greater community or public good? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the fact that it is open to the public, that fulfills what we wanted with TIF. But I think that what Matt said is that this could open up a lot of different nonprofits, and you can't be exclusive. You can't pick and choose who you want there.
Well, yeah, I mean, and again, this is part one of I'm no doubt a multi-part conversation that help us. But these were just some initial thoughts that if we need to continue to refine and expand upon or scrap altogether, I think that's totally fine. I think, again, going back to the question around the sound earlier, it's like Stonehorse Green is we're building the plane as we fly, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, can I actually, if I can jump in there and ask, just to take it back to what's on the agenda, is the discussion on the use of Stonehorse Green as it applies to the L&O committee. So what is it that we need as a committee to be concerned of right now? Do we need to be crafting language to tighten up the current ordinance as it is to reflect the use of the space, the hours, and the sound? I mean, I think my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but where we are as an L&O committee is that we have the bare bones of a current ordinance for the use of the space, and it needs more. We need to, as we learn as we go, we need to make sure that we're setting up policy and procedure that will make it clear on how this is going to go. Is that what our role is?
Right, yeah.
Oh, go
For
ahead,
the
Matt.
use of the space?
So, yeah, I mean, as I see, I don't see that we have in our ordinances, anything in here that talks about, who all is allowed to apply to have events here, basically.
Right. Because it's different from a park. It's different from a park shelter. It has its own separate part in the ordinance. So I think we need to make it, there's a reason that it has its own section. So I think we need to make sure that it's clear in that section.
Well, yeah, that's part of it. I think one of the things that initially brought this up is maybe a bigger thing is certainly I think L&O should always be involved in special event permits, but who is in charge of this space? Is it public lands? Is it Abby? Is it some other body? Do we have PRFC, CLC, or what's been talked about here is the CDA? Should there be another body that has recommendations about how this is used, similar to those other bodies? I think is another topic that really is not.
I think part of that is going to be determined as like, what is our vision for the space period, right? And then I think
Right.
if is this to hold exclusively, city sponsored, events, then to me, then that probably means, I don't know, probably, a staff recommendation with that comes to this board, right? Or something like that. If it's to build, kind of community, that's where I feel like the CDA comes in. If it's to, do more programming type stuff, then maybe that's a parks thing. And I think what I'm fearful of, though, a little bit is we ask 5 people what the vision for Stonehorse Green is, and we get 5 different answers, right? And I think we need to, that's why I'm thinking that we need some sort of a, kind of a middle ground component, if you will, where, maybe there's multiple seats at the table that can agree on, okay, this is really what it's intended for, et cetera. And maybe that exists, and maybe and I'm just dense in that sense. And I'm happy to admit that if that indeed that's the case, if that is kind of already been predetermined and I'm just unawares.
I don't think you're dense. But I do think that Abby has been leading this programming at this point. And I'm not sure exactly what hat she's wearing when it is. I think it's city planning. I don't think it's CDA. But Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm not, this is all new for everyone, but there's the Terrace Avenue Pavilion. There's supposed to be a group that works for the programming of that. That might be something that we want to look at for a template of how it's composed, of who sits at that table and stuff. So it's they do have special circumstances for programming that also. There might be something to look at there.
All right. With committee's permission, I'd like to just continue this discussion next time, if that's all right. And then perhaps we invite Abby to join us for a little explanation from her. I know she's just so swamped. I hate to make her come to another meeting, but she might welcome just the chance to help us flush this out.
Or if
Katie,
nothing else,
our
just a
CDA.
communication.
Pardon me, Kathy?
Is this on our CDA agenda? There's something about Stonehurst Green on our CDA agenda.
I can bring it up really fast. No, just the reporting back from the Jazz Festival at Stonehorse. And then, staff update on fall fun. So those are the items on CDA.
Okay, thanks for checking.
Yeah. Yeah. Does that sound okay, you guys, if we just keep this discussion going without any formal requests or anything in writing, anything voting?
Will that prohibit anything from happening? I just want to make sure that there's not groups that are like waiting on this or anything like that.
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
I
Sweet.
think the weather is the benefit here. This time of year, we're not gonna
Right.
hopefully have a lot of.
Yeah, good point. Is that okay? Does anyone else have anything on this? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
This
moved.
kind of a second.
Russ second. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody. So much great
You guys.
discussion.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.